You're listening to the Voice of Florida Architecture, the podcast of AIA Florida. Welcome to the next installment of our Legacy series, where we sit down with past presidents and leaders whose work, leadership, and influence have left a lasting impact and continue to shape both the profession and our association today. I'm your host, Rhonda Hammond, AIA. Through these conversations, we revisit defining moments in the profession, explore the paths that have brought them to leadership, and capture the lessons they've carried forward. Their stories remind us that today's progress is rooted in yesterday's service and one's endearing commitment. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Joyce Owens, FAIA and RIBA, founder and principal of Architecture Joyce Owens, past president of AIA Florida, and a nationally recognized leader in climate responsive design and advocacy. Widely known for her award-winning work in tropical modern architecture and resilient coastal design, as well as her leadership within the AIA at the local, state, and national levels. Joyce, welcome to the Legacy series.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you in this very special podcast.
You've been such an inspiration to me over the years, and I have to share one more instance. In preparing for this conversation, recognizing your amazing career, I decided that we needed to start entitling each episode. And I decided yours would be Designing with Purpose, Leadership, Resilience, and Communicating the Value of Architecture.
Well, if that sums up my career and my life, I am very proud. So thank you for putting it in so few words, but very powerfully. Thank you.
You're founder of two successful architecture firms, the first located in London and your current firm here in Florida. You served as president of your local component, AIA Florida Southwest, in 2010, as president of AIA Florida in 2017, on the National Strategic Council from 2019 to 2021, and was elevated to AIA's College of Fellows in 2018. Furthermore, you were awarded the AIA Florida Medal of Honor for Design in 2020 and was the first woman ever to be awarded the AIA Florida Gold Medal in 2022. In further recognition of your work, you were voted as one of Forbes' top 200 residential architects in 2025. You've had an incredible career. It's just soaring. But looking back, what first drew you to architecture? And how has that original spark evolved over time?
Great question. My origin story. So my origin story is not kind of an easy path like many architects have, where they knew from day one that they were playing with Legos and Meccano sets and all that. And for me, I thought I loved my animals, so I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. So I went to pre-vet school first and immediately knew within months that was not where I wanted to be. I just knew I did not want the rubber gloves and the big stainless steel tables and all the things that go along with that. And so I floundered for a bit after that. It gave me a great chance to sort of find out who I was and what I needed. And it gave me a great chance to take some business courses and economics and so on. But one of the things I always wanted to do in high school was I had asked to take a drawing class, but having been at a parochial school, my favorite little nun told me, "That's not for the girls, Joyce. You can't go do that. So that's just for boys." So I was never allowed to take my drawing class. So while I was floundering, I took the opportunity to take a drawing class. It didn't take long before I realized, although a drawing class has nothing to do with architecture in the big sense of things, I loved being able to sit at my desk and create something. It was just a wake-up moment that, I want to learn more about this. This is very interesting to me, and this is something I think I might be interested. So I took a chance. I had to transfer colleges at that point because where I was, they didn't have an architecture school. So I transferred to the University of Notre Dame, where I started pretty high up in their architecture program. So I again, wasn't really sure what I was doing, but after one semester, I got sent to Rome for a year. Notre Dame Rome program is notoriously long and wonderful. And it was a great year. And it was when I fell in love with this idea of being an architect, which I still didn't know what an architect was at that point. All I was learning was how to draw and watercolor and learn about the history of architecture. And I was like, this is great. And then we did some design work too while I was there. And I definitely didn't know what I was doing, but I knew it was something I would certainly wanted to learn more about. That's kind of how I started, and then I just kept going from there.
So you worked in London. Was that your first architectural job? Did you first work in
No,
London?
I actually started working elsewhere first. And then I was in Colorado for a couple of years. Then I went on a scholarship, on a Rotary scholarship to London
Mhm.
and for a year. And that's when I decided I wanted to go back. But I knew I had started something. I had done 2 years of my internship, and there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting my license. So I made a pact with myself that I was not going to go back to Europe until I had got my license. So I did this as fast as I possibly could. I got my license and I moved back to England, and getting my license made all the difference. There was a reciprocity at the moment, and it was about to run out within 3 months. And so I had to study very hard and very quickly. I had to take exams so that I could get licensed in Britain too. So within about 6 months, I was licensed in 2 countries. It made a big difference in my career, having my license as young as I did, especially for a woman, I think, to be able to
Mhm.
say I'm licensed in 2 countries.
That's phenomenal. How did the international experience shape your design philosophy?
I have to say, I think because I came to Notre Dame a little bit late, I felt like when I left Notre Dame, I didn't really know my trade. And I feel that having the opportunity to be surrounded, my whole family there ended up, they were all architects. Okay. I got married in England too, and it was a family of architects. And so I was completely surrounded by architects, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And so I really feel like I learned my trade there. I really learned about design while I was there, just because, you're surrounded by excellence. I'm living in a great historic city. And when you live in a city like that, with so many people, any city that is as big and as old as that, the quality of the design, no matter if it's, I always think of like the nosies on the stairs in the subway. They're solid brass and they will last for 200 years. Everything there is it's so nice. It's just such quality. And so I guess I learned so much about quality and good design while I was there.
So, what brought you back to Florida?
Well, I think I have to say I really miss the sunshine. And I was concerned, literally, I was very concerned that if I stayed in England much longer, that I would end up spending the rest of my life there. That concerned me because I had lived in Florida for a couple years when I got my license, and I really loved the sunshine. I had lived in Colorado too, and there was sunshine there. And so for a girl that grew up in the Midwest and under gray skies in the winter, I knew the sun was very important. That was one of many reasons. Okay, I came back, but it was definitely high priority for me. No regrets. Happy to be back.
Amazingly enough, you're referred to as the coastal architect, known for place-driven, tropical modern design rooted in resilience. So, what does resilience mean to you as an architect today?
Resilience for me specifically means having expertise in something that makes your buildings unique to their climate. So I always use the resiliency term, not specifically to Florida, but to any architect that is dealing with climate in their work. And so for me, I became an expert in hot and humid and hurricane prone area building. Those things really determined how I became an expert in what I did because I paid attention. I went to building science school. I learned a lot about how do we design in this area because I had learned in London, that's a very damp climate there. It's very humid. It's not hot and it doesn't rain hard like it does here, but it rains a lot and it's very damp. And so there I had to learn about how do you deal with damp. And so that was easily translated here because it can be very damp in the rainy season. I became an expert in learning about that for a number of reasons. So when I started my own business, I really wanted to focus on doing that.
Was that the biggest change between the two, or is that the thing had the most similar between designing in London and here in
I
Florida?
think also it has to do a lot with the passive side of design, shade and ventilation, which is not quite as critical in London as it is here. I very much took a piece of Florida with me when I went to England because I did have the chance. I had been in Florida for many years before I started working here. And when I went to London, my designs there, because I had my own practice there, were very much about inside, outside, and that blurring between the two, which many of us practice down here in Florida. We didn't have to concern ourselves so much with the shade part of what we were doing, but that whole inside, outside, it was great. I took that with me to Florida. I designed and built my own house when I lived in London. And then some of the other projects that we got to design from scratch, they're very much about indoor, outdoor living, which was very much not a part of how people lived in London at the time, because they were used to like Victorian houses with their little
Hmm.
tiny rooms, with their doors, with their fireplaces and small windows because they had to keep the heat in. And all of a sudden, I arrived and I'm like, oh, let's blow these walls out and put in some big openings. And so it was
Just
a
let
fun
some
time for
light in.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let the light in and let the outside come in as well. And of course, I brought a lot back with me when I came back too.
You were president of AIA Florida in 2017, and your theme for the year was communicating value. You advocate the importance of architects communicating their value more effectively. And it was this message from your convention that resonated with me and was the catalyst of my launching this podcast to better communicate our value and educate our public on what we do beyond creating the pretty drawings. What led you to make communicating value your central focus, and why is communicating our value so critical today?
It's an amazing thing to hear that what I did back then in 2017 actually did resonate. And if this is the result of my year, and that's all I could take away is the fact that you're doing this podcast now, I'm very honored. Okay. So thank you for telling me that, because you never know, like when you're president, how it affects other people. You don't know if what you're saying is going to ring true or hit a nerve with someone. So I'm so glad you told me that. Thank you very much for letting me know.
You are so welcome. It just resonated. And I had noticed we're adept at sharing our value amongst ourselves. But it's like, how do we get that message? How do we share? How do we let people understand what it is we really do? And so coming up on my year as president, it's like, how do we do that? And of course, I have to confess, my first thought was, well, let's do a newspaper. And I thought, no, that's not how people communicate anymore. So I thought we've got to do a podcast.
And you're doing two podcasts because you're doing the foundation as well, which is public
Mhm.
outreaching, which is so nice and so amazing. That's the one that really resonates with me, is that you're trying to reach out to the public as well, which is
Yeah.
great. So I guess once we're clearly understood, I think everything will change for us. And I'm not talking about how do we get there, because we can talk about that in another thought. But I think that once the public, and not just the public, decision makers in our communities, our leaders, the developers, builders, people of influence in our communities, once they understand this, everything will change, in that it will strengthen our influence, because they will know they can come to us to help them make decisions. So I'm not saying that architects have all the answers, because we don't, but we can be very rational and look at all their needs and help them come up with solutions. I think once we're more influential, because many architects I know are influential, I think it'll support fair compensation as well. And I think instead of being a race to the bottom as far as fees go, I think the people that are making the decisions to hire us and pay us will say, oh, I feel that this architect is worth paying that. And so I think compensation will definitely change. And I think it will secure our future and our role at the decision-making table as well. So I think now is the time. I think it's as good as time as any. It has been getting better, and I just think we can't let up the pressure, and I think we need to do everything we can to move this idea forward.
I know that you are not, I think you've just cycled off the Strategic Advisory Council, but I didn't know if you were aware that we are looking at relevancy as we look into the future for the profession and for the association. How are we relevant? How do we remain relevant? What our message needs to be. And I think that's, again, all a part of communicating our value, but understanding how we're perceived so that we can address those issues. I didn't know if you were aware of that study.
I wasn't aware that at the Florida level, that's where the emphasis was going to be placed. I think it's fantastic. And I think it very much plays into not only my theme of communicating value, but also at the national level, they have just ratified their new strategic plan as well in March. And it's called PACE Strategic Plan. So it's practice, advocacy, climate, equity. And so for me, for the first time, I see the strategic plan for the AIA, not a bunch of words, but four direct paths that we can go down. And so the relevancy part of AIA Florida plays exactly into what National is doing. And I love to hear this because in the future, I would hope that AIA National will be able to reach out to all components, whether they're state components or local components, to align those efforts so that we're all headed in one direction at once. That would be a wonderful outcome if that was the future of the AI National and their new strategic plan. So I'm really excited about their plan. I think it's a great plan, and I think it's easy, it's comprehensible. Like there can just be ground rules and off you go. And I'm very excited for it. Lots of ways we can get there. What I always want to talk about with as how we communicate our value is when I was on the Strategic Council, just before that, AI National had published a brochure. It was a public outreach. It was a toolkit. How do you reach out to the public? How do you do this? And it was a really well put together document, well researched, well put together. I know they had professional advisors on this thing, and it was really good. And for 5 years, it was out there in the public. I don't think it reached component level enough. I'm interested in this thing, so I saw it on a number of occasions, and I would go to AI national conventions and I would see the opportunity to learn about this there. So I know it existed. A few years later, I got invited to join one of the grassroots. This is when we had grassroots. I was with Mark Levine, who was also in my camp as far as communicating value. And the two of us were asked to bring this toolkit and our passion for communicating value back into the members' vision. And so that's what we did together. We did this amazing event. We got to do it twice. We got to do two different seminars on it. No one on this call had ever seen this toolkit before. Okay, it was incredible. And I was like, oh dear, we did not. They've done all this and it hasn't reached our members. So that's really important that we figure out a way how to reach our members. What I feel that Mark and I really learned through that seminar was the stories that architects have to tell are amazing. I mean, it's just incredible. I just kept asking the question throughout the seminar, like, who have you told that story to? Have you told that to your councilman? Have you told that to your mayor? Have you told that to your newspaper? Or have you spoke about it on a podcast? Podcasts weren't that big yet, but have you? And they would be like, well, no, we don't really know what to do with our story. And I thought there's a gap here that needs to be bridged. And so what I would like to do is I would like for the AIA to bring back that toolkit, not as a brochure this time, but in a way that our members will use it. So our young people will see it, however it is that our young people advise us how they want to receive this information. That's how we have to do it this time. But it can be revamped and reused and put into, this century, okay, and it can be reused. And I feel that one of the ways it can be used very specifically is, for example, how I am an expert in coastal and resilient design. There can be a toolkit that's specific to Florida so that everyone in Florida has the vocabulary and the method so that when they meet clients or developers or builders, they can talk about these things in a voice and a vocabulary that is not complicated. It's not architecture speak, it's plain English, and they can talk about it. And they will have examples on how to back up what they're talking about. And so in California, it's going to be a very different toolkit. It's going to be a toolkit that talks about fires and drought or flash flooding out there. I mean, there are so many different ways we can use this toolkit to be specific to all of our members, whatever they are. So that's one of the things I would like to see the AI be able to do in the future. And I think our PACE strategic plan is perfectly aligned with the opportunity to do this plan.
So as I mentioned, you were elevated to the AIA College of Fellows in 2018. Share with us about that experience and why it's important we protect the sanctity of fellowship.
So when I became a fellow, I literally was you have to have 10 years. And I would say I was like 10 years to the day, okay, when I got my fellowship. Because I'd had a long history behind me of the various things that I was asking, like, these are the things I've done. Do you think I could get fellowship, right? And I had to put it in a format that made sense. And I sort of broke it down into public leader, professional leader, design leader, and AIA leadership as well. So it was kind of a leadership application that I did, but it was on 4 different fronts that I had asked to be a fellow. And so you'd always do an object, right? And I put mine, I'd have been advised by various people to put it in object too. When it went to the jury, I got a call a week before and they said, "How would you feel about changing your object?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Like, what do you want to change it to? And so they chose that I should be in Object 6, okay, which is about education, research, and literature, which might have been because after I came back from England, I was writing for the newspaper. And I did that for 4 years, okay, more than 4 years, almost 5 years, because I ended up writing for USA Today, not as frequently, okay, as I did. My local column was once a month. It was called Architect About Town. And I mean, who doesn't want to be called Architect About Town? Okay. What better
Exactly.
name? What better way than to get your name out than to call yourself Architect About Town? That wasn't my name. That was the name my editor gave me. Okay. So that was great. And so I suppose I had done a lot of exhibits on architecture in my community that had sort of been the whole of Southwest Florida. And I guess for that reason, they put me into that category. And so it was a real honor for me to get fellowship, okay, and to be recognized because I know they didn't know where to put me or how to put me into a fellowship. I really do feel that it's worth it to do fellowship. I feel that it's a real benchmark of excellence, not just for each other, but most importantly, it's sort of it assures the public that the architect has made an impact on their community and the built environment, and that the architect is held to a very high standard. And so I think each one of us, as we get fellowship, very important that we tell the public what we've done and that why we've done it. And so that they understand now that you are an expert in that field. And it will lead to another story that you can tell the public. For me, it wasn't so much about resiliency back then because the hurricane hadn't hit yet. It was about design excellence and writing and leadership in the community. And so it was all these different things. So when people did ask me, and I was interviewed by various people that came to me and said, "Can we want to do a story on you?" It gave me something to talk about, all of those reasons why I had received fellowship. So I think it's another great tool for us to communicate our value. And I think it's very important.
So, Joyce, I am very happy, very excited, and proud to announce that you are a candidate for AIA President-elect for 2027. So, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. From your campaign website, you state AI is transforming practice, climate threats are intensifying, margins are shrinking, and despite everything, architects contribute to the safety, resilience, community, and quality of life. The public still thinks we just draw houses. You know the value you bring, but you're still fighting to be heard, fairly compensated, and respected as the expert you are. You further state that architects are uniquely positioned to lead, and it's time that the world knew it. Let's ensure the AIA clearly and powerfully communicates our value to the public. That is such a powerful statement, but tell us why now is the time for your candidacy.
Initially, I didn't know it was the time for my candidacy because it wasn't really on my radar. I had stepped down from my national service on the council in 2021, and I was still on the public outreach committee, which is my favorite committee. You can guess why. And I was very honored to be on that committee. In 2022, September, that's when the hurricanes started to hit here. And so I couldn't serve at national anymore. And so I did step down. I am always available for my local chapter. And as Becky knows, I'm always willing to be available on a state level as well. So when I'm asked, I help wherever I can. And I try to do whatever I can do. But I haven't really had a major role at any level for a few years because my community was completely devastated after those hurricanes. And I really felt that now is my time to go back to my practice and really focus on what I can do for my community. And one of those things that I got to do, not only help rebuilding, but to become a voice in a community about how do we design for coastal environments? How do we deal with hurricanes? When other houses had been lost, the houses that we had designed on the beach were still standing. And there's some very powerful images out there that show like that was the truth. And so a lot of people asked me both at the local, state, and national level, why did that happen? And so for me, it became a wonderful opportunity to talk about those things so that going forward, many other communities could learn from my community. How do you design better, and how does the architect play a role in designing for the future and climate risk and all of these things? So it's been a good run for me in helping to rebuild here, which is great. And so, like I said, I didn't know. And so I was invited to run by people at a higher level than me. And so I listened, and I listened to the people around me who helped me decide that this was a good idea and I should try. It just made sense to me. I figured after all the things I had done, I certainly don't need this to be on my resume. Got plenty of things to do, and my practice is in a good place. And so it was just, if I can take my mission to another level, it would be a real honor to serve at a national level. I think that was sort of why I feel that for me, now is the time. And I think it's a good time for the profession to have a strong leader that has a vision, a strong leader, but not someone that's going to take over the AIA and think they're going to change everything, because you're not. I mean, I've been at the national level. Changing things at a national level it's not easy. It's a big organization with a lot of talented people that are equally passionate about what they do. And our staff is amazing and our leaders are amazing. And I think that collectively, I think it can be, well, it is a very powerful organization. I would just like to help.
So you mentioned that they've just adopted a new strategic plan that they've entitled PACE. So remind us what that is, and then tell us how your experience align with these principles.
So the PACE strategic plan, practice, advocacy, climate, equity. So I found it quite interesting because it was sort of the platform that I started to run on. So practice, I feel I can help advocate for practice because I've had two practices in two countries. And when I say two practices, both of them were very successful design studios in both countries. And so I'm coming at it from both, a financial success as well as a design direction as well. And so I feel like I can help other architects to see very clearly how a practice can become profitable and successful through a lot of the things that I've done in my career. So advocacy, again, the mission of my life, right? To advocate for architects on whatever level it takes. I feel I've been out there since I came back from England, and I didn't feel that I was as respected when I came back to Southwest Florida, a small town here in Southwest Florida, as I had been in England, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized because the developers and the builders had taken over a lot of our responsibilities. And so my goal by asking the newspaper if I could write for them was to begin to advocate for us and to talk about architecture. So I didn't talk about architects initially. I just went through and talked about the history of architecture. It took me about 6 to 8 months once a month to talk about the history of who we are here and why our buildings look like they do, and why the new buildings that we're looking at are not appropriate because they don't have anything to do with our climate. And I felt the buildings that were being designed for the future here in Southwest Florida needed to address our climate. So that's what began that whole part of my interest in coastal resiliency, because I felt by looking backwards, we could look forward to the future and design for the future. And then there's climate, my resiliency thing. I'm glad I listened back in the day because a lot of my clients pushed back when I said, look, we're going to do our foundations differently on the beach. I don't want to do a piling house for you. You are paying the money to design on the beach. You are paying for a home it's going to be a luxury home. It deserves to be standing in 50, 100, 200, probably 500 years, right? And it will be now because I convinced my clients through education about why these foundations would be better than just a simple piling foundation. It worked. I mean, they listened and they paid extra. And sure enough, after the hurricanes, those are the houses that remain standing because of our foundations. And I mean, because we not only met the current very restrictive Florida building code, but we also exceeded it as well. And so our buildings fared very, very well during that time. And then equity. I am a woman and I have managed to found two female founded practices. And I just feel that there's value in that. And there's a wisdom that I bring into how did I navigate a world. I am not the youngest candidate, but I have been able to navigate a time when everything was, all the firms in my area were male run. There were no female practices here. I managed, I did it twice. And when I was in England, I did it with another woman. So we were two females. She was Turkish. So we were two foreign females in central London and we started our own practice. And it was an unbelievable opportunity to do what we did back then. We had no history there. I don't, it's hard for me to explain. We didn't have a history there as foreigners. And so we were not part of a class system. We were classless. And so as two foreigners, as soon as we got in on the ground floor with people that respected us, our practice took off. And so we had clients like Alexander McQueen and Vivian Westwood and the V&A and the future Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. And so like we were just able to just join in and do what we were able to do best. And it didn't matter whether we were male or female or blue-eyed, or it didn't matter where we came from at that point. We were just allowed to do what we do best, which was to be good architects.
That is so great. So everyone here at AIA Florida is so proud of you, and we're all rooting for you. So just know that you have that support.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So this series is called Our Legacy. So I have to ask you, when you think about your legacy, what do you hope it'll be?
So I would like my legacy to be when people meet an architect on the street and they say, "What do you do?" And you get the answer, "I'm an architect." People often give a lot of respect to that response. And they say, "Wow, you're an architect. That's amazing." I feel we're very lucky. We're a respected profession. It's a real honor that they have this feeling that we are somebody in society. But then when you ask them, "What do you do?" Like, "What do you think I do?" They don't really know and they can't answer that question. And so my legacy in my ivory tower, as I call it, my white ivory tower that I want to live in is it really will be that they can answer. Architects, add value to our communities. They advise people that make decisions to make correct decisions, and they provide solutions in our built environment. It's not just about making houses or making blueprints or making models, right? It really is about how we can change and alter our communities for the better.
So do you have any advice for the next generation of architects?
I have advice for all of us, I think, and it very much involves the next generation. I think the next generation has so much to teach us, as in me at my level and my experience. I feel it's very important for architects at this stage to listen and to learn from young people because the world isn't the same as it used to be. It has changed so quickly, even in the last 5 years. I mean, we're on the brink of, disappearing as architects. If we don't listen to our young people, we are going to disappear. And I think the young people too, there is a wisdom that older architects bring. And I think that's a very valuable thing. So I want both of us to listen to each other. I have to say, I often talk about AIA Florida, how good AIA Florida has been in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years at bringing young and old together, through the various programs that we have in Florida, AIA Florida. We have our legislative day, where when I started legislative day, I think we had like 3 students come. And this year, how many students came this time? I mean,
I believe we had in the neighborhood of 200, and I think there were more students than architects this
that's what
time.
I heard. Yeah. And
Mhm.
that is an incredible launch pad because they not only get to meet architects, but they get to understand what the problems are being an architect. And so, because we're there out talking to our legislators. And so That it's an incredible program. I think it's amazing. I find that our drink and draw program, oh my God, it's not only is it so much fun, but what an opportunity for the older generation to meet students and young and emerging professionals. How many people have I met? It's unbelievable. And it's so fun. And we all drink and we all draw. And it's just a really nice atmosphere. And then by adding salsa to the whole thing, just makes it truly Florida. And it's really a great program. And I think programs like that are very valuable, that all chapters and all components can learn from things like that. And I know each chapter has something or different programs that, can be looked at. I think Florida's doing great at trying to ensure that we all meet each other, because once we're out of college and we go off and do our practices, we could become a little bit lonely in our each in our own communities, right? And so going back to our convention and having those opportunities, or legislative day, to meet other people and new people, it's a great way to see, to reconnect and to see what everyone's doing and how they're doing it and learning from each other. So I think it's more a message for all of us to be open and not never feel alone as an architect, because the AIA gives us this opportunity for us to be with each other. And I think it's really important that the AIA, that it serves us at so many levels, the national level, the local level, the state level. And it should be able to amplify our voices together so that we can all be heard collectively. I think now's the time. We need all the influence we can get as our profession changes so quickly and faces so many different challenges.
So you answered my last question, which I was going to ask you why membership in AIA was so important. But before I let you add anything to that, for those listeners who may not know, the Drink and Draw and Salsa is a program we have at our convention every year. So if you haven't signed up for a convention, that's a great reason to do so. So.
Yeah. And definitely go and definitely sign up, because it is just so much fun.
So is there anything else you'd like to add to why membership in AIA is so important?
At a member level, I think the AIA really connects us as architects and, gives us a larger purpose than just our individual practices or what we're doing day to day. I think it can and does provide a platform for knowledge and professional growth and for advocacy. I think more importantly, it does create that one united voice for us all together. And that's what I would like to see happen more, is that that voice becomes more powerful together. I think as architects, we're misunderstood. And it's not because we lack value, because we are very valuable. But I think I don't think we've consistently, across all of our components and chapters, communicated that value together. And so I think membership, it provides us with structure and the community to change that. I think we can do it, and we can elevate the public's understanding and strengthen both the business of architecture and the relevance of architecture in everyday life.
Joyce, this has been an incredible conversation. So thank you for sharing your insight, your leadership journey, and your clear vision of where our profession needs to go.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk about this, because it's always on my mind and I'm not going away.
Your work reminds us that architecture is not about just what we design, it's about how we lead and how we advocate and how we shape the future for our communities that we serve. And on a personal note, it's been a privilege to call you a friend and colleague and to witness the impact that you continue to have across our profession.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you.
Oh, and congratulations on your candidacy. Again, we're so proud and are excited to support you, and we'll be watching what comes next. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our Legacy series, celebrating the architects that have shaped our association and the practice we share today. Their leadership reminds us that our collective impact is built through mentorship, service, and a shared vision for the future. You can learn more about Joyce's coastal practice through her website at architecturejoyceowens.com. You can also find articles, new broadcasts, and other information on her social media through Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. More importantly, you can learn about her vision for the association on her campaign website at joyceowensforaia.com. With specific questions on her platform, you can email her at letstalk at Joyce Owens for AIA.com. We'll list these links in the podcast notes below. Join us as we continue these conversations, celebrating the legacy that connects us and the future we're shaping together. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your colleagues. This is Rhonda Hammond, AIA, your host. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Voice of Florida Architecture, a podcast of AIA Florida.